is Joystick, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
The volumes has got to be insane. At that point, if we had a product we were selling 5,000 units a month of, we thought that was pretty damn good.
I'm Kevin Savitz, and this is an interview episode of Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. Alan Ackerman co-founded Microbits Peripheral Products, MPP, with John Wiley. MPP made modems and printer interfaces for the Atari 8-bit computers. It also published some software, Microfiler and Assault Force 3D. The company would restructure to become Supra, a giant in modems which became the largest hardware manufacturer for Commodore Amiga computers. This interview took place on October 2nd, 2015. Talk to me about the beginning of MPP. I understand there was a bicycle shop and you guys were selling
I'm actually back in the same town. I grew up in Albany, Oregon. Population must be about 60,000 now, and my father had a PhD in psychology, and he when he graduated, finished his PhD, he went to work for the Albany Mental Health Clinic, and then so I guess I would have been 4, and then I was born in the LA area. I grew up in Colorado, and then was here until I was, I guess, close to 30. And so I met this guy, John Wiley, in high school. They had what they called the Talented and Gifted program, and they basically gave us 2 hours a day to do more or less what we wanted. And I actually had my first, I guess you call it a PC or home computer, was I was able to borrow a thing from the electronics lab in the junior high or the high school, and it was a 6800 processor, and I think one of the first programs I wrote is some code to transmit radio signals and put a little antenna amplifier on there. And, so I had a background in electronics as a kid, flying model airplanes, blowing stuff up, and electronics. And then and then I learned some high-level programming on some mainframe computers and punch cards and that sort of thing, 8th to 9th grade. And then the first microprocessors were coming around. And then I remember running into a Radio Shack TRS-80 level 1 and being amazed the thing actually could run BASIC. And then wanted an Apple II but didn't have enough money. So I ended up buying this called an OSI C1P. It was $349 and 6502 based computer with a Microsoft BASIC, and the biggest problem was the attempted display resolution. I think was 64 by 32 characters, but it had real problems with overscan, so you could only get about 32 characters per line. So it was pretty primitive, but it was reasonably fast. And they never sold that many of them, but I did publish a few pieces of software for it when I was about 15 years old. And on a good month, we'd get a royalty for $49 or something like that. There weren't too many of those, but managed to get some small royalties off that for years. And then I met this guy, John, and Wiley in high school. And I remember, and then at that point, that next year they bought TRS-80s, but they had these old teletype machines left over from the mainframe days, and they were somehow aware, I don't know if I told them or what, those could be turned into printers. So I ended up building them these printer interfaces, wrote some code to basically bang the characters out on the Trash 80 and charged the school a minor amount for, I think I paid 3 or 4 of them total. And and then so at this point, I guess I'm 16 or 17 in a small town. So I'd get people calling me basically wanting to do engineering consulting. I've got this program that tracks satellite antennas for aiming my satellite dish. It's written for X basic. Can you convert it to Y basic? And yeah, sure, no problem. $200, and I do it in a few hours, and then something like that. And then I got a few of those sorts of jobs, and then we organized this computer fair at the. We actually used the elementary school closest to the high school, and met some people in the then emerging microcomputer industry, and that was just as the 8-bit Atari was coming out. So met the Atari rep, and I think it was for $3,000 you could get the basic dealer package, and it was so we put it $1,500 each, and got this their starter kit, which was basically one of everything at essentially dealer price, or maybe two of everything. And then so we've got the standard Atari stuff, and everybody either wanted a printer more so. For some reason, at that point, I was more interested in the modem. So actually, but in order to put a modem on that machine, you had to buy their interface box for the 850 interface module, I think for $249 or $299, and then you could connect that to a printer or a modem. Mm-hmm. So I ended up once again writing this using a joystick port, writing some software to bit-bang the software-driven UART, and then ended up doing a licensing deal with this manufacturer of low-end modems called Anchor Automation. And our first product was this $149 300 BPS modem for the 8-bit Atari. And needless to say, that was a little bit early. This is 1982, 83. Mm-hmm. So somewhere in this, we'd started university at Oregon State University in electrical engineering. I was actually accepted to the U.S. Air Force Academy, and my life would have gone quite differently if I would have gone there, but had this computer business set up. So out of the uncle's bicycle shop, with a corner of that. And then that was actually during high school.
Started at Oregon State in electrical engineering, and the dean of the engineering department says, I've got to get rid of 2/3 of you guys before the third year because we only have X amount of room in our professional program, and we're going to make things as frustrating and annoying as possible, so most of you leave quickly. And that's basically what they did. And I remember this Fortran class, and that was taught by this computer science department. The last thing they wanted was engineering students coming into their program, so they made that. It was just like the only class I actually sort of liked was some Western history class, and so made it. Second term's over. I'm on academic probation, and go to one of the first West Coast computer fairs in San Francisco, and then stopped in Reno after that. Went to Sun Valley, did some skiing, and look around at this computer show, and I could see, I remember which year that was, but fairly early on. This would have been 82, 83. And I look at the stuff people are showing, and I say, I could do stuff this good. And then, so as we're driving back, we'd drop out of school and say we as
you and John?
John Wiley and I, yeah. So we had this retail computer business store that by then had moved into a separate location outside the bicycle shop. And then basically started focusing on doing hardware and software products for microcomputers, to start with the 8-bit Ataris. And as I said earlier, I don't know how it recorded, the first product was this 300 baud modem. It came with a piece of terminal software on a cartridge and I guess it was reasonably well integrated as far as plug and play, and then you could get this massive speed increase, I think up to 450 BPS. And then the next product that was so we've taken care of this modem function, but you still needed this 850 interface for the printer. So sort of out of necessity, did a printer interface. This was before the documentation was even out on how the SIO port worked and what the protocol was there. So, and they had 4 joystick ports at that point. So I ended up doing the MPP 1100, what I think it was called. It was a printer interface that connected to a joystick port.
I want to say 1150, but I'm going to...
I think the first was the 1100. The 1150 connected SIO. It was a little more complicated.
Oh, I see. Oh, the 1100 was just through...
That was the first one. That was connected to a joystick port, and then I think... I don't remember why decided that it was better to work on the SIO bus. I think there was the joystick ports were likely to be going away, or maybe people needed them. I don't remember. Mm-hmm. So so the printer interfaces were definitely a much bigger seller. It's a year later. Go back to the same computer show and come back with, I think, $80,000 worth of orders for this stuff. So
Did you have prototypes at that point? Did you?
I had prototypes, but it wasn't. We had prototypes, but I don't remember if we had production packaging or. I think as it worked out, this was fairly early on, and we really hadn't sold anything, and it needed some money. Had really no experience in volume electronic manufacturing. Went to the local S&L, and the guy was able to see, okay, well, he's got a prototype that works, he's got orders, and they weren't particularly risk adverse, so borrowed a little bit of money on I think it was just an AR accounts receivable line. They'd loan us 70% of our accounts receivable or something like that. And then, started hiring people and growing, and it evolved fairly quickly. Then what was next? So a whole bunch of things. Then we started trying to do high-speed disk drives. Then there was some software called Microfiler, which was this home database program. We ended up publishing that for the 8-bit Atari and the C64. Then at some point in this, we acquired this other company called Cardco, which was a manufacturer of mainly printer interfaces for the Commodore 64 computer, but we had that. Then didn't really see a line between consumer electronics and home computers, was doing those plasma globe orbs and had a ton of different stuff on the. I actually ran across one of the presentations we had when we were trying to get some. So by this point, we've got a larger building. I don't know, got 100 people or so running around and trying to do everything in-house, from a print shop to, and did not have an accounting system, and it didn't have a. So we'd end up with 98% of the parts you needed to build something, but not the last 2%, and then had borrowed some money. I think it was $300,000 from the local, the Portland branch of one of the banks, and then unsecured creditors called the bank and asked what's going on, which is kind of a stupid thing to do if you're an unsecured creditor. But the loan officer was fairly junior, and he decided that he would. And by then, I brought in this friend who had some experience with turning around companies, and he'd sort of worked with us in getting rid of the less critical things, and we pretty well had it restructured, I think. And then the bank comes in one day and says, give us the keys. And they were going to sell it to the highest bidder, and ended up buying the assets of the company back from the bank for, I think it was $107,000. So something on the order of 10 cents on the dollar for. So nowadays you'd call that a refinancing or recapitalization. But it.
So you guys ended up buying the stuff.
Yeah, I got some of the local guys to put up some money, and they really wanted equity, but didn't really want any partners at that point. So they got a 50% return in less than 6 months. They were happy. We got our stuff back at 15 cents on the dollar rather than 10. So we were happy.
Right.
And basically took the best of the people and went to a much smaller or more appropriate sized building. So that was Supra Corporation, and that was literally profitable from the very beginning. In fact, it was quite profitable as we're selling stuff that we got at 80 or 90% discount.
Right.
And and then it kind of went on from there. Pretty well always did modems. By then the technology had gone to the 1200 bit per second modems, and then about that time the Commodore Amiga starts coming out, and started doing products for the Amiga. And at one point the Amiga business was over 50% of our business. Set up a subsidiary in Europe, selling those products. And then about the time the Amiga started its long decline, was essentially the transition from the V22 BIS to the V32 BIS, which was, so we're going from 2400 BPS to 14.4. And saw the ability to use some Rockwell integrated modem chips, and I'm trying to remember the price points. I'm thinking I think the 14.4 was $299, or maybe it was $199 and $149. I can't remember the price points, but they were $149 and $199 actually seem, that might have been right. But so we really sort of bet the company on that, those products. But it was quite good timing. The internet, as we know, it wasn't really, this was still 3 or 4 years before the World Wide Web, but definitely had some fairly rapid growth going on, and then we did a bunch of different things, but at that point the modem business is really growing rapidly, and we're doing something in the 10 million a year range. And then I guess it would probably on average it was probably following something not too far from Moore's law. It would almost double every year, and on average it wasn't quite that rapid, but it was pretty close. And then so now I'm almost 30. I get along with John all right, but we got way too many people in middle management, and it's just I'm spending all my time in these meetings, and it seems like he hates change. I generally like change, and when it was small, it balanced things out. His wife didn't get along with my wife. I'd been in the same small town too long, and I basically just wanted to get it sold and get my money out of it. So I ended up relocating to Vancouver, BC, and Barbados, and I did spend one winter in Nassau, Bahamas. Decided that wasn't my island, and then we were on the path to taking the company public. So at this point, we're doing. Then it's 30. So about the time I'm really trying to get out of it, it's around that 30 million a year range. And then we ended up selling the company to Diamond Multimedia in 1995. And it's a matter of public record, but the deal was valued at $54 million, and John and I each had about half the stock, so you can kind of do the math backwards, and that was
not too bad.
Yeah, so did all right, and then I did venture capital principally in Vancouver, BC, and I've made money and lost money on a lot of things, but I've lost it or invested a lot of money on various aviation projects, and got divorced, and so I had more money when I was probably 25 than I do. I'm 52 now, but I'm not too worried about it. It's I'm doing all right.
You don't have the money, but now you have the smarts.
Yeah, I mean, I've got enough money. I've got a bit of a liquidity issue now. I actually spent most of the last 3 years in La Paz, Mexico, and ended up leaving there at the end of the year. And I've got money down there, but it's difficult to get hold of. And it's anyway. So I've been cleaning things up, and my first girlfriend there, I think, is going to meet me in San Diego in a couple weeks as soon as she gets a visa. And I did listen to a couple of your interviews with David Small, and I'm actually amazed that there's as much interest in this as there is. But
it's a lot of fun to do them, and I don't know how much interest. Every interviews get listened to, downloaded, maybe 1,000 times, and we get a lot of good feedback from people who are interested in the history of Atari computing. So,
okay,
all right. So I'm going to go back a little bit, and we're going to go back to MPP, and I have some specific questions for you now that you've given me the kind of general overview of things.
Sure.
So you said you started with the Atari. I think the Atari modem, the 1000C, was your first product.
Yeah, that was the first product. Yeah, so the retail store was called Microbits, and then when we started doing the peripheral products, it became Microbits Peripheral Products Inc. And then after signing that potentially 50 times a day on a piece of paper, the next company was Supra, and I've tended to keep them short since then. So
sure.
Yeah.
Right. MPP must have looked good after Microbits Peripheral Products. So why did you start with Atari? And why not TRS-80 or Commodore or why?
Well, as I told you, I did sort of start with that OSI C1P, but the Atari, it was depending on how you want to look at it, was a second generation 6502 machine, but with the the custom chips, and it clearly was a far superior product from a video perspective or home entertainment perspective than the Apple, with the custom graphic processors and sound chips and that sort of thing. So I guess it was, as I remember, actually, I think it was Star Raiders was the first reason, because that was at the time, fairly impressive game, I thought. I learned years later it was actually written in Forth, but it's another. So it was made mainly because I liked the architecture of those machines, and I mean, you can still argue back and forth on that was slightly before this. Well, actually, it was. I don't remember the timing of all it. I guess the C64 must have. It seems like the C64 came out a couple of years after the Ataris.
So I was going to ask you about the technical challenges of developing modems that work through the joystick ports, but it sounded like in your story you already had experience doing something like that through.
It's pretty straightforward. It's just on those computers it was particularly easy because there's a programmable timer that you could use to generate your. You can use it as a software UART, and
Did you consider it elegant, or did you think it was a hack?
Oh, I would have called it both. It worked. Yeah, you could describe it either way. The printer interface definitely worked well. And in fact, when we later did printer buffers and had by this point we had the 1150, which I used I don't remember the part number. It was a Rockwell part, and it was a 6502 with integrated I/O chips, and wrote this code for this. So that plugged into the SIO port, which was more expected. And I don't recall whether it had a daisy chain port on it initially or not. I don't think to begin with it did. But so that was I guess the one negative, I sort of forgot about this, but the one negative with it was actually a fairly large negative, was the way we did it, you actually had to open the board, plug it in EEPROM. I mean, strictly speaking, you could have loaded a driver, but yeah, so that was the big disadvantage of the joystick port printer interfaces, is to get complete software compatibility, you had to replace an EEPROM, so we got away from that fairly quickly. But I do recall when you ran the two side by side, the one that works with the joystick port would run way faster than for some reason. Well, I heard the story on that. Those SIO chips will run up to over 100 kbit. I don't know what the maximum speed is, but when they originally were doing their OS, the fastest terminal speed they could get was 19.2. So SIO is limited to 19.2, which was, in my view, terrible, except the C64 was even worse for reasons that I don't understand. But so needless to say, things have gotten a lot quicker, and it's pretty amazing what these computers do now. And for that matter, I've got back into the electric radio-controlled airplanes and helicopters and all that stuff, and it's quite amazing what you can do with these lithium polymer batteries and the silicon-based gyros and rate sensors. I mean, for cameras and everything else. And but yeah, I mean, you can get these helicopters that are fully aerobatic and will fly for 20 minutes or so on a rechargeable battery. And I'm actually looking at scaling some of that stuff up in the full scale market. But I got into saltwater boats and airplanes up in Vancouver, and have definitely lost some money on aviation ventures. And the boats were never really designed to make money, but I'm trying to sell one of them. I got an 85-foot Azimuth down in La Paz, Mexico. It was actually built by the founder of Monster.com in 1997, and this guy spent $8 million on it before he was finished. Yeah, it's a nice boat, but I need to get that sold. And my partner's soon-to-be ex-wife just contacted me last week, and I think she'll actually be better partner than he was. But I've got a BMW X3 down there, and this guy that was working for me started smoking chooky. They call it their crystal meth. Went off the deep end. So the BMW's got the lawyer. The lawyer has a BMW. I just need to get that shipped up here, and that's about.
Sounds like you've had adventures.
Oh God, yeah, I've had lots of adventures. Yeah, so.
So the 1000, I have my 1000C from when I was a kid.
Okay.
And then you came out with the 1000E, and I was never clear on why. Why?
I don't remember either.
Okay, I mean,
can't remember either. Yeah, I don't. John might possibly remember. I doubt it, but I don't remember.
Okay, fair enough. It's a long time ago. And then the software, the smart terminal software, did you guys develop that in-house?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I did that in-house. And then that is something that we did over the years, is we'd create bundles for the more popular machines with everything you needed to make it work, with the the terminal software or the fax software or both. And yes, but we stopped doing the software in-house, so we licensed one for the Amiga, we licensed one for the PC, and did a few acquisitions along the way, and those generally worked out fairly well.
You said you coded Smart Terminal yourself?
Yeah.
Nice. Did you still have the source code? Any chance?
Nope. No, I lost that ages ago. Yeah, that was in 6502 assembler, and I really haven't done any significant coding since then. My software is generally limited to whatever you need to make the hardware work, and that's about it.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the other Atari products. We talked about the printer interfaces, and then Microfiler.
Yeah.
Anything to say about that? Any stories? Any?
Well, the guy that wrote it was a pretty good guy. It was Jim Harrison, and was a high school teacher that taught himself to program. And I think it was a decent product. Our comment was you can't pirate hardware, and that was an issue. We actually did this game. I think it was called Assault Force, and
I was going to ask you about that, because that pretty much seemed like that game was developed to dump math coprocessor carts.
Yeah, let's say that the performance gains at the end of the day were not what I thought going into it. But I didn't have a complete understanding of what was involved in doing the 3D graphics, and that coprocessor essentially was pretty limited. It would do a 8x8 multiply and a 16x8 divide, and that was about it. So at the end of the day, some Germans actually hacked the thing, and you can find it running without the coprocessor card, and there's a negligible performance difference. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So that was.
So tell me the story about that. What was the order of things? It's like, let's develop something for.
Well, it was sort of like I've got this interest in military level flight simulators, and the box to do that was $80,000 just to do the graphics. I've also sort of, I wouldn't say I'm a hardcore flight simulator, but I've generally ran some form of flight simulator pretty much on. I might go for a couple of years without any of them, but each time the performance increases significantly, I get back into it, and it's actually they're amazingly good now, to the point that you can actually familiarize yourself with aircraft and airport layouts before you go in there fairly well with some of them, and I might also comment that the RC flight simulator works very well as well. It's they're if you can, and certainly for the helicopters, it's a lot easier to learn to fly than crashing and rebuilding helicopters. But yeah, so I had this sort of understanding of the 3D. I guess that's was sort of the thing that interested me, were games with the 3D graphics, and I saw I'm sure people had already done custom hardware to do the graphics portion of it, but the only thing that you could really do at that level was, and I did run into that little, I forgot who made it, but it was quite inexpensive, and at any rate, so that I would have to say the Microfiler was probably a better product at the end of the day than that game was. And,
was the idea that maybe you come up with other games that would also use that?
Yeah, that was kind of the idea, but frankly, I got the wrong programmer involved in that. And had we had different software guys, it probably could have gone in different directions. And clearly, the essential concept, was right on. As there's been a huge area in 3D cards,
sure,
3D chips. And I bought something here a few months ago. I haven't hooked it up yet, but it'll drive 3 monitors off. It connects to your laptop with one DVI connector, and then I'm not quite sure what's in there, but the company that bought us, this Diamond Multimedia, that was their sort of name to fame at that point, was their 3D cards. But in reality, I think they were, at least from what I saw, the guys, they were mainly stock promoters, and I could sort of see that looked like what was going on with our deal. They were doing a big financing to buy Supra, and I pretty much had the sense that the stock was probably going to go down from about that point on, and I was pretty much right on that. So, so that worked out well. And then they, so within just a couple months of, very few months of signing that deal, I had my money out of that, and haven't paid a lot of attention to the at this point we were we would move things where at some point we do manufacturing in house. It would kind of go back and forth depending on, and then sometimes we'd have a lot going on in Asia or Mexico, but with the modems, it actually worked out when the electronic assembly houses were buying the second and third generation of the pick and place machines, the robotic assembly equipment. You could get the not so great stuff quite, it was quite inexpensive. And having that ability in house, for low volume production, everything from, what you might call beta testing, where you're building, 20 or 50 of something, it worked out quite well. And then as the modem chips themselves were the majority of the cost in the product for a long time, by leaving that and the way those were dropping, to the extent that you could reduce your inventory, literally the extra 2 or 3 weeks it would have taken to get the stuff to China, build it in China, and ship it here cost effectively. The way the prices were dropping, we're probably talking about a month realistically, and if you're going to get ocean freight and all that, was meaningful. And it was the difference. Whatever you could achieve in labor savings by building in China was more than offset by any lost flexibility. So we actually did most of our own manufacturing towards the end of my involvement for a lot of the high volume modem products. And then, there might be certain cases but the volumes just got to be insane. We were, at that point, if we had a product we were selling 5,000 units a month of, we thought that was pretty damn good. And as I remember, I think we had products that we were, as we started doing deals with like Costco and those sorts of people. I think we had products we were doing 20, 30, maybe as many as 50,000 units a month. But while that's going on, the margins are going down, and you can literally look at the charts on the company, and from the time I started heading from the door to the time I got my stock sold, our margins had gone from about almost 40% to like 18%. And some of that was I was able to get some added value out of things, but realistically, most of it was outside of my control. I mean, I might have been able to get another 5%.
Yeah.
But it was just, so it really gets to the point where, you've got to be a really good operator to make any money at it, because how much bad debt can you take when you're only making, and there's all this price pressure. So it was getting difficult to, in order to make any margins, you need something that's fairly new. Mm-hmm. But the engineering effort in doing this stuff, it's getting to the point where it took pretty well significant money to do much of anything, and it just got harder, at least from my perspective, to come up with those relatively high volume, relatively high margin things that you could actually build a business on.
Sure. Which I think leads me to my next question, which I was going to ask you about. Especially in the Atari realm, ideas or products, things that you guys consider that didn't make it to market.
Oh, there were tons of things that we considered that didn't make it to market, and then there were things that did make it to market that people probably forgot about. But we did do some quite successful, massively overclocked 68,000 upgrades where we for the Amigas, and I think we had it working on. I don't think we ever did one for the 8-bit Atari. It was mainly for the Amigas. I think we did one for one of the Macs, mm-hmm. But we were getting, I think it was 20. So they were 8 megahertz stock. We'd get them to either 25, 28. I think there may have actually been a 32 at one point, with a cache, little bit of cache memory, and these things were quite inexpensive as well. So those CPU upgrades actually didn't work out too badly in some cases, and I actually financed a company in a nearby town that had some success doing that for PCs, but at any rate, that ultimately didn't work out that great. And
I found an article in Antic magazine, and it lists some things that you might have been working on at the time. It said you were preparing a low-cost resource-sharing system that would allow as many as 8 Ataris to share printers and disk drives. Yeah,
we actually did that. Micronet, and we actually had that. There were actually 2 or 3 different products that would that sort of fit in that space, but the one that we actually did build and sell at least a few of, and I don't know why we wouldn't have sold more than I think we did, but you could connect, and I don't think there was really a limit. You could chain them together, and I think the box had 8 ins and 1 out, and you could take all the SIO devices, and essentially it just detected whoever does the request gets the resource for, and it was there was no real, I don't think it even had a microprocessor on it. It was just a timer, and then the next guy gets it, and so that did work, but
it said there was an impressive new 10 megabyte hard drive for only $800.
Yeah, we did do hard drives reasonably successfully. We never built the drives themselves, but the first product was a 5 or 10 megabyte drive for the 8-bit Ataris, and then did a few of those. Then did add-on drives, had a whole range of them for the Commodore Amigas, and yeah, those did reasonably well. But you know, sometimes you can make a lot of money, and for instance, the price of DRAM, you could pretty well predict what was going to happen there. And the Commodore Amiga came with originally it was either 256 or 5. It seems like it was 256K, and then it was almost imperative that you bought another 256, which had a clock, had a real-time clock in it. And so I pretty well knew the price had to drop significantly from where it was. I don't know if this has happened so much lately, but there used to be these huge oscillations in the price of DRAM, you know, where the price would, in constant dollar terms, like triple, and then it would drop by. So built up a bunch of these boards with sockets in them, and then they were essentially ready to go. And when I don't remember who we were dealing with, Micron Technology had their memory fire sale, we were suddenly in that business, and I think we made something like something close to $500,000 net profit on those over just one window where we had it was probably one of the record going from high to low, and Commodore was pissed because you know, they paid cash for all this, and suddenly their dealers don't want to buy theirs, they want to buy ours. They were trying to jam them down people's throats, and yeah, no, Commodore was not happy at all about that little adventure. But yeah, so sometimes there's, you know, I guess you got to be in that space and sort of understand the dynamics of it in order to, you know, spot some opportunities.
Right.
My latest, I don't know if you ever saw this, but I remember one of these computer shows seeing this thing that was essentially a giant inkjet printer that they set up the frame, and then it would paint walls. And, you know, so it has industrial size spray nozzles. And I actually just renegotiated my divorce. Well, my wife failed to follow the divorce settlement, and she actually owes me more money than she has right now. But I ended up getting some fairly valuable art from her and a little bit of cash, and which got me reflecting on art. And I've done reasonably well at buying sort of large, I guess you call them condominiums or villas, where in recreational locate like Whistler, and Barbados, where it's people don't want to have to maintain a yard. They want low maintenance, but they want large and fairly nice, and sort of focusing on the high end of that market. I've done all right, but you know, started looking at doing some fairly high levels of wall finish and this faux painting, and then I remember seeing that thing at this computer show, and you know, I think the most advanced inkjet printer I've seen now shoots 3 different blacks, a metallic gold and a metallic silver, and then 4 or 5 primary colors. So I don't know what that is, 7 or 9, and that thing, you know, does, you know, incredible, the good quality output. And yeah, so I think I'm going to look at bringing that product back. I mean, I would think if I would have seen it if it had made much of an impression, and it's so easy to do now. I mean, literally any image that you could print, you can paint on a wall at any size you want, and the hardware is fairly, I don't want to say trivial, but it's obviously doable. Right. So I think I'm going to, one of my best friends now is an architect, and I'm just going to get him to commit to using it for a certain number of projects, and I'll make sure it's in his financial interest to do so, and then that should get that going. But yeah, I definitely am at the point now where I do need to start a some new ventures, and I want something I'm going to run myself. I'm sick of letting other people lose my money.
Do it yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and the other side of that is either other people. I've done reasonably well on the venture capital side of things, but there's been some big wins and some losses in there. But I suspect there's going to be another couple wins still. But yeah, where are you?
I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. There's an entrepreneur. There's a couple entrepreneur groups there, and I know the same turnaround guy, family friend I run here, is still operating, and I want to meet with him, and then he'll run into things and see if there's anything that he runs into where there's some synergies there with some work and some money, and I can I certainly know where to find money if and Portland's nice. My brother actually works for TSA out of Portland International and lives in Vancouver, Washington.
Oh, cool.
John Wiley's up in Vancouver, Washington, and I've stayed with him, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times since
I've been trying to get a hold of John for months, and I'm having a difficult time. I've actually spoken to him, but then nailing down the interview, we were about to do it, and then his phone was disconnected, and his website went down. And...
yeah, he's had some issues. He's a bit of a flake. Yeah, so keep trying. I was under the impression he actually had done it, but it didn't go very long. But I guess not.
No,
Well, I happen to know right now he's deer hunting because my mom's boyfriend. My mom is 76 or 77. John's dad is 92 or 92. Flew B-17s in the war, and so I know John's deer hunting right now with the family. But I'll tell him that I talked to you and suggest that he might want to do that.
Tell him what a great time we had together. And
you can ask him some of the questions I forgot. He might. I'll ask him what the difference between 1,000C and 1,000E is. I doubt he remembers, but he might.
Yeah, he might. My 1,000C is blue, and my friend Mark had a 1,000E, which was gray. I'm just like, that's not enough reason to.
I think when you were asking me that, I was thinking, well, I think the color might have changed to blue. I almost said that, but that might have been the only change. I don't know.
Silly. In this article I read, it said something interesting. It said another ingredient of the company's success is its innovative program of user group support. Directed by Kurt Stockwell, the program offers solid product information backup as well as strong savings on group purchases. What was that about?
What was that about?
I mean, were we just selling directly to users groups, or I'm trying to
parse
what they were talking about.
I'm trying to remember what that means. We had with the modems. I'm trying to think what you used to call these things. Bulletin boards. Mm-hmm. These BBS operators.
Yeah.
We used to have a fair bit of success selling to these BBS operators, which, I guess one way of looking at them is sort of pre-internet ISPs.
Yeah.
So we would offer these guys, and then we would use them, if nothing else, as they were great beta testers, and we give them a quote beta tester discount price, and they were happy to pay more than dealer price for a product that was guaranteed to have bugs and faithfully report them to us. So it was in our interest, both from really for just getting the bugs worked out of it, but as a way to transition, from no volume to some volume and, get the kinks worked out relatively elegantly, but still make some money. It actually worked. It's the same model everybody else uses now. I mean, you get the people that are prepared to debug for you, and they, you can essentially become a developer of most anything and get the. But at this point, I think the majority of the people don't need whatever they would rather let somebody else. Personally, I'd rather wait for a full release of most anything. That's it all depends. If there was one reason I needed it for something, then it would be completely different. But,
right.
But like with most of these OS updates that Apple or Microsoft does, there's just so much stuff that one doesn't really need that I just soon wait till it's a little further along. And
yeah. So if you could send a message to the Atari 8-bit computer users that still exist, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
I don't know. Have a good journey. I don't know what else to say. It's kind of I had a collection of this stuff, but this lawyer that stole my other stuff out of my aviation company, basically, I don't know what he did with the stuff, gave it away or sold it to somebody. And it was all, I had a bunch of stuff stored out at a company called Lindair at Vancouver International Airport. And at any rate, so my 8-bit Atari collection disappeared, which I'm sure I could replace it from the guy that ran Video. I think it was called Video 61s, where I got all this stuff.
Yeah, they're still in business.
Yeah, I think he's still in business. He's probably, yeah. And we did some, it's been, it was 95s, yeah. So he ordered some, make sure he never runs out quantities of printer interfaces. It was essentially a custom production run. 25 years ago, and I think still got a good portion of it.
Nice.
I remember I was shocked at that stage of the game to have somebody that actually wanted 500 things, and it was a bit of an effort at that point to even scrounge them up, but we managed to do it somehow. And yeah. Cool. So you ended up buying the rights to the name Attic, or
No, we kind of stole it. I mean, I know Jim Caparel, and I just kind of. His magazine's been out of business for a long time, and we
exactly. I don't
took
think
the name as an honorarium more than anything,
Right.
So,
yeah, and then he'd be getting, he's got to be getting on in the years because he would have had to have been 15 years older than I was. I'm thinking.
He's still in the magazine publishing business. Last time I talked to him.
Yeah, I would believe that.
Yeah, that's his thing. He enjoys it, so he's still working.
Yeah. But there isn't much of a magazine business anymore, at least for print magazines,
I don't think so.
from what I can see. And I used to be a huge buyer of it. I mean, I still like to read the flying. I mean, if you give me the choice between, flipping pages on the tablet or actually flipping the paper magazine, I'll take the paper one most of the time. Although the tablet works in the bathtub, paper ones don't so well. But yeah, I remember about, let's see, it's when the iPhone 5 just came out, so it was 2012, and going to Europe and taking one of the books I got from the Apple store, and I had on the iPhone and the tablet, and the other one I had it in print, all 700 pages, or whatever it was, whatever they were called. They got a bunch of travel books, pretty good.
Frommer's or something like that.
Yeah, not Frommer's, but at any rate, Lonely Planet, and found that the one on the tablet was way more useful. Just the ability to, and you always had it with you,
right?
Because you always got the phone, and so print. And I've moved quite a few times over the years, and you know how heavy print paper is to move.
All right, I think that's about all I need. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.